It's time to find out what happened to Aaron Burr after the duel. On February 19th, 1807, Aaron Burr is arrested for treason. Burr is most famous for killing former Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton in a duel in 1804. Burr was serving as vice president at the time. After finishing his term in 1805, Burr travels to New Orleans and meets with U.S. General James Wilkinson, an agent of Spain, and together they hatch a plot. Their exact plan is unknown, but it is speculated that they are hoping to seize U.S. and or Spanish territory and establish an independent republic. Burr leads a well-armed group of settlers toward New Orleans in 1806, prompting an immediate investigation by U.S. authorities. General Wilkinson panics and turns on Burr, sending dispatches accusing him of treason. Burr is arrested in Alabama and sent to Virginia for trial. He is acquitted mainly because he had not engaged in an overt act, a requirement of treason specified in the Constitution. The public, however, sees him as a traitor, so he moves to Europe for a time, but he eventually returns to New York and dies in 1836 at age 80. Stay tuned for more on Hamilton and Burr. Could Burr make a comeback similar to Hamilton someday? I'll tell you if it's likely or not. First off, Burr served under Colonial General Richard Montgomery during the American Revolution, apparently with distinction. He in fact received a congressional commendation for bravery in action. He, after the war, was very outspoken in his defense of freedom of the press. In fact, Burr is well ahead of his time in many of his political views. First off, he's an early abolitionist. He also fought very hard for electoral representation for average citizens and not just property owners, and this is something that's not going to come really till Jackson's time. He also defended the rights of immigrants and was well ahead of his time when it comes to women's rights. In fact, he was famous for promoting the ideas of British feminist Mary Wollstonecraft, who wrote a great book in the late 18th century called A Vindication of the Rights of Woman. Wollstonecraft, incidentally, is also the mother of Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein. So, he promotes her ideas, and he goes so far as to introduce a bill in the New York State Assembly that would have granted women the right to vote in the state of New York. Of course, that bill doesn't get very far, but Burr's the one behind it. Hamilton and Burr, however, do not see eye to eye, mainly because Hamilton distrusted Burr. He sees Burr not as an ideologist, but as an unprincipled political opportunist who Hamilton believes would shift his views and allegiances at any time for his own benefit and to advance his own political career. Hamilton famously used his influence to make sure that Jefferson, rather than Burr, became president back in 1800. And of course, the second place Burr then becomes vice president. Jefferson, though, chooses a new running mate in 1804, and so Burr decides to run for governor of New York. Once again, Hamilton, also a New Yorker, uses his influence against Burr, and Burr ends up losing by a wide margin. Burr's furious, and they exchange a series of letters, and these letters eventually culminate in the famous 1804 duel. Interestingly, after the now famous duel, Burr expects a hero's welcome for defending his honor. Instead, he faces public outcry. He flees to Georgia to a friend's plantation and kind of hangs out there while things settle a bit. He's charged with murder in both New York and New Jersey, but neither charge reaches trial. Both charges are dropped. He then returns to Washington, D.C. to finish his term as vice president, which ends in March 1805. Burr's role in Hamilton's death, however, effectively ends his political career. Any Burr accomplishment is overshadowed by this duel. As Burr's character sings in the great musical Hamilton, he says this: "History obliterates in every picture it paints. It paints me and all my mistakes. When Alexander aimed at the sky, he may have been the first one to die, but I'm the one who paid for it. I survived, but I paid for it. Now I'm the villain in your history." So then the question is, could Burr make a similar comeback? Because, of course, Hamilton's complicated legacy has been positively restored thanks to really two things. Number one, the vast writings that Alexander left behind. And, of course, these vast writings are the backbone, you might say, of the hit musical Hamilton. It allows us to understand Hamilton as a person, to understand his character, to understand so many events in his personal life, which then make for this fascinating musical about him. Unfortunately for Burr, no such comeback is likely to occur, and this is in large part to the fact that there are only 2 small volumes of his personal writings that were left behind. Most of his writings, which apparently were also rather vast, were lost in an 1803 shipwreck. So it's hard to know really what Burr thought about things. We'll probably never know whether Hamilton's judgments about him and his character were accurate or not, because there are no real writings for him to defend himself with. And those writings, of course, might have painted a very different picture of Aaron Burr. If you've liked what you've seen, please like and subscribe. Also remember, there's a great Mr. Lewis video here. Oh, and there's another great Mr. Lewis video right over here. Thanks.